In the embrace of the morning sun, golden horizons meet. South Africa, a land of countless stories, unfolds at our feet. In a land where oceans kiss, the capes embrace, under the African sky, by the ocean's sweep. Stories are entwined in memories deep, history intertwined in time's diverse grace. Bound by fate, diverse souls meet. Amidst foreign faces, a varied landscape, South Africa's heartbeat is in the rhythm of life. Our story begins at crossroads of history. South African, Chinese, a mystery unearthed. Navigating the tides of change, a resilient stream. Through time's embrace, the echo in the air, in the heart of South Africa, a narrative so rare.
The South African Chinese community are fourth, fifth, and sixth generation descendants of immigrants who came here around 1860, 1870. They were traders who were seeking a better life outside of China. The majority of the forebears of the South African-born Chinese come from the southern part of China, an area called Guangdong province, and they form two groups, the Cantonese speakers and the Moyanese speakers, or the Hakka people. So those are essentially the forebears of the South African-born Chinese. There are many Chinese in South Africa today, and the majority of the new immigrants came to South Africa maybe in the past 30, 40 years, from about the 1970s onwards.
For numerous years, the Dutch East India Company traded with China. The company also had posts in the Middle East, in India, in Korea, in Japan, but the trade with China was always important, and one of the many products that were sought after was Chinese porcelain. And during the existence of the Dutch East India Company from 1602 till 1799, a lot of porcelain was exported from China for European markets. And the Dutch East India Company was the main transporter and in between in this trade.
In the wake of the VOC echoes, we step through time's door, from maritime tales to a fortress's lore, where stone walls whisper stories untold. The castle of Good Hope, its secrets unfold. In the heart of Cape Town, a fortress stand, a bastion of history where power commands. Amidst its walls and stories past, the castle of Good Hope.
While I may not have any empirical evidence the Chinese were here at the central tip of the continent, I do know there's quite a lot of conjecture, and historical items have been found in Africa to indicate there was an interest in the continent by the Chinese. I think it would be imprudent to think that only Western society or European societies were interested in expansionism and what the world had to offer. Modern history is a strange thing. We acknowledge the circumnavigation of the globe by Magellan and the Spanish sailor in the 16th century. Well, we don't investigate or interrogate how far the Chinese sailed, primarily because they may not have been interested in colonizing areas they visited. They might literally have just traded with the locals and moved on.
Naiju, our guide through time, walks us through the dimly lit corridors. With each step, the air thickens with the weight of stories. the shackles, the whispers, the resilience, we listen humbled.
We think of the Chinese as immigrants that only arrived now during the 20th century. They have been here since the 17th century. So they have been part of the South African makeup, they have been part of the South African identity as we became a South African nation. So we should be careful when we talk about cynicism. We should be careful when we're talking about anti-Chinese. We need to understand that the Chinese was part of the enslaved that were brought to Cape Town. Some of them were brought as slaves, some of them were brought as prisoners. They were mostly brought as prisoners, but eventually they would end up as slaves as they had to work alongside the enslaved. And some of them here in the slave lodge was a prison that was specifically for the Chinese prisoners and who were held within the slave lodge.
The shadows of the past intertwined with the hues of today. The South African Chinese community, resilient and ever evolving, narrates its story. The echoes of apartheid struggles linger, dancing in the corridors of memory. Patrick Chong emerges and illuminates the path of justice. Today, the South African Chinese community thrives. In the rhythm of daily life, we witness the threads of tradition weaving seamlessly into the tapestry of the present.
Under the apartheid system, the Chinese couldn't attend what let us call Model C schools, as we know it here in South Africa. And the only schools that would provide us with a reasonable education were so-called Christian church schools, basically, and St. George's being an Anglican-based church private school. Well, one must realize before '94 the Chinese were basically not allowed to vote. We weren't allowed to own property other than in so-called designated areas. The trouble was the Chinese being such a small community, basically it was difficult for government to put us into a group area. I mean, if you think that in Cape Town, that the population of the Chinese population in Cape Town while apartheid, during the apartheid years, probably numbered less than 1,000 Chinese. So how do you put them into a group area? There isn't area small enough. And so we were allowed, I mean, technically we were allowed to live in areas provided we got permission from the neighbors.
So bid farewell to this tale. Let us remember the enslaved, the oppressed, their courage, their travail, the human spirit strong and true. Through time's embrace, love ever pure.